There are some of these that are going to make your class significantly more fun to play. Like, they're actually sick, gameplay-wise. But even just theme. I think that hero talents were such a smart idea, because even if it is just extra spec tree points, it's also so heavily theme-based, and I think so many people care about WoW theme that are not, like, constantly giving their opinions on WoW year-round. Like, are there Death Knight players? And I read this a little bit, where there's, like, you know, when we look at Riders later, it's about, like, the 4 Horsemen. Are there people that are Death Knight players that have played Death Knight back in Wrath that are going to come back because of Rider of the Apocalypse? I think so. Like, cool, like, Dark Ranger or Frostfire Mage. I absolutely think that people are going to, if they're on the edge of playing it, they're like, holy shit, I want to be a Rider of the Apocalypse. So I think the fact that they basically gave you extra spec tree points and are also introducing heavy theme, as I've seen more and more of these, I just think it's a huge W, and I think the closer we get to the expansion, the more people are going to just be talking about this kind of stuff.
Collect any artifacts you can find before they are lost to the time ways.
Let's slam it. Deathbringer. Alright, you guys know the test. The very first node so far has been able to rule out or confirm whether it is super insane or really bad. And if it doesn't sell you, most of the time it's somewhere in the mid category. So it's between Blood and Frost. If there's anything I want to see from here, I feel like, and I don't want them to paint you into Breath of Syndragosa, but I think, and this is a real deep cut, but I think there's a world to make Bone Storm more interesting that involves constant runic power generation rather than immediate, used all at once, instant draining. And then I think that Breath needs a lot of work to be more versatile.
4, 3,
and I wonder if they're going to address
2,
that here with
1.
the Blood and Frost
Adrenaline
Death
rush.
Knights in the same tree. Reaper's Mark, 2 runes, 1 minute CD. Okay, viciously slice into a soul of your enemy, dealing Shadow Frost damage and applying Reaper's Mark. Okay, each time you
Adrenaline
deal
rush.
Shadow or Frost damage, add a stack of Reaper's Mark, and after 12 seconds or reaching 40 stacks, the mark explodes, dealing damage per stack. Reaper's Mark travels to an unmarked enemy nearby if the target dies or explodes below 35. Ooh! And where there are no enemies to travel to... Oh, or explodes below 35% health when there are no enemies to travel to. The explosion cannot occur again on a target for 3 minutes.
Countered.
Wait. Oh, okay, so specifically the Reaper's Mark
Rush.
traveling to a different target or
Countered.
exploding below... Okay, I initially was like... I read that last part, and I'm like, okay, you can't use this on the same target, but no, it's okay. Okay, so it's giving a 1 minute cooldown damage profile spell to Blood and Frost. Let's just remove tanking from the equation real quick, and we'll see how this gets supported later. But just I think it's interesting to just read the first thing, because clearly when they make these, this is the thing, and then all of this supports the thing. There's been a few scenarios, but they're pretty rare so far, when like the first thing's okay, and then something at the bottom makes it 10 times better. This doesn't sound amazing right off the bat. Also, Frost is not really a class that is in need of having like a stronger bit at 1 minute. They are kind of famously a really good 1 minute class, or like a little bit less than that. Like they just have really good pillar uptime, especially with the Dragonflight talent tree. Blood tank damage profiles are totally whatever. Like there's usually nothing that is super controversial in that way. Like you look at a tank's damage over the whole fight, you're not ever looking at a tank class to carry swapping to an add at a certain point or something like that. So basically this is just something you're going to use 2 runes on every minute. And when you're doing damage, which a Frost DK is going to do has a ton of ticks of Frost damage. This is going to stack to 40 stacks extremely fast. And then it's just going to do a big burst of damage.
Adrenaline rush.
This is not horrible, but I don't know if any... It would surprise me if someone's reading this and they're like, this is sick. This is probably something that needs to be supported a bit. So sometimes it's a little confusing where to go here, because sometimes the middle has like the sauce that makes everything make sense, and the left and right are like supporting things. But let's just go left to right and see what happens. So Reaper's Mark unleashes a dark wave towards your target and back, dealing Shadow Frost damage in both ways to all enemies caught in its path.
Adrenaline rush.
Okay. I'm trying to think. They're both melee classes, so you're not going to get, like, hella good value out of this. What's the range on Reaper's Mark? I'm assuming 40. Okay. Wave of Souls crits cause enemy to take 5% increased Shadow Frost damage for 10 seconds, second to 2 times. My only hope for this, both as melee classes, is I hope that this has a really large hitbox. And, like, if you're in melee range of a bunch of targets and you cast Reaper's Mark on the biggest one, for example, I hope that this wave is big enough to realistically cleave everything in the pack and not have to do any kind of weird positioning to where you're making sure that it's actually the farthest, like every mob is in between you and the target, because that could be just really annoying to play with and very reliant on tank players if you're a DPS and if you're not playing Blood. So that's just something, but they could fix that instantly. I mean, that sounds fine. So basically, this is just going to make it even more of a stronger 1 minute, right? Because like everything else is going to take more damage from your spells after. You're going to be doing 10% more dam. And this could also just hit really hard itself. This is pretty good. It also gives it more of an AoE profile.
Countered. Dispel.
Fixated.
Here we go. We have Shuttered Soul. Reaper's Mark Explosion causes a piece of the target's soul to tear out and spiral outwards, dealing 10% of the explosion's damage to enemies it passes through. Okay. This looks like the visuals of this could be insane. Enemies hit by this effect deal 5% reduced fizz damage to you for 10 seconds. Okay, that second part is just like a blood thing. That's going to make it more of like a DR as well. That's like a completely irrelevant DR for whatever it's worth, but it's fine. If anything, if you're making stuff for blood, I think in either of the blood trees, it would be smart to have... If there's anything that blood really needs... Actually, this is so hard to deal with because, again, it would make it super OP. I'm always saying, like, Blood DK's biggest fault is they need something that allows them to, like,
Fixated.
be tankier in a pull until they get into their rhythm. But that would also make Blood DK just, like, the best class of all time, right? Like, you would... Imagine a Blood DK. Like, a Blood DK, once it, like, gets going, and if you play Blood DK, you know what that means. You can't die. The difficulty, if you play correctly, the difficulty is getting into that flow, like when you're starting a pull. Getting threat and getting tanky enough to get into your flow is so... But, like, if they were to give you something that, like, bridged that gap, they would also just never die to anything, right? Either way, fine so far. Looks like they didn't miss the mark on this having some AoE toolkit. Also, this is going to kind of help Frost and Mythic Plus a little bit. So Frost outside of Breath... Well, Breath is, like, theoretically a sick dungeon talent if your tank constantly chains combat and you can keep it up forever. But I think everyone who's ever tried this or realizes that, like, practical is different than theoretical, that just doesn't happen, and it's a huge problem. So Frost usually... tries to do something like a Blitz in dungeons. Like, it should be a little bit more consistent, right? But then that never really... A Blitz always, like, a bunch of tiers below other things. Giving you something where it's realistically you're gonna have a little buff on the pack on a 1 minute cooldown. 1 minute cooldowns in a dungeon environment are fantastic, right? So this is definitely, just profile-wise, really, really good for Frost in dungeons. Blood DKs...
Countered.
Have been actually doing decent AoE damage this whole expansion. So I don't know if they need it that much, but it's still interesting. Keep going. Reaper's Mark cost is reduced by 1 rune, and its cooldown is reduced by 50%. Okay, so the... okay, so the first choice node here is this happens twice as often and casts... and costs half as much. Okay, so the other part of this choice node, if it doesn't do that, better be absolutely insane.
Adrenaline rush.
Reaper's Mark now... This is so weird. This is the most powerful node on the entire tree so far, and it's a choice node. Reaper's Mark now explodes at 50 stacks, and the first Scythe of the Exterminate has a 100% increased chance to apply Reaper's Mark. Okay, so we don't know what the fuck that means. That's got to be this, right? The first Scythe of Exterminate. All right, let's time to read Exterminate, right? And then we'll go back to that. After Reaper's Mark explodes, your next Marrowrend or a Blit costs no runes, summons 2 Scythes to strike your enemies. Ooh, I kind of fuck with this. The first Scythe strikes your target for fizz damage, has a 50% chance to apply Reaper's Mark, and the second Scythe strikes all damage around your target for Shadow Flame damage.
Shockwave, get down!
Adrenaline rush.
So far, I have only read 2 of these, but I really, really like this. It's cool. So you just get a free Reaper's Mark, which now seems less OP because it's up every 30 seconds. But then also Reaper's Mark now explodes at 50, means you can get a bit, means every use will be 25% stronger at least, right? If you just look at it that way. 40 to 50. And then the first Scythe of Exterminate has a 100% chance to apply Reaper's Mark. So...
Stop it!
Countered.
Does this
Rush.
chain infinitely?
Stop it!
Countered.
Oh, I see.
Get down!
I see. It does not make the first Scythe of Exterminate have a 100% chance to apply. It increases the chance by 100%, meaning it goes from 15 to 30. I see.
Get down!
Okay, that's actually kind of interesting, but don't you just take Swift End for sure, unless it ruins your...
Healing Tide.
If it makes your rotation clunky or something? I mean, the first one is just single target versus AoE.
Adrenaline Rush.
I mean, I like the choice node. I don't think that this choice node is a... The worst choice nodes you can make are you don't take these in different situations, and you don't take these for different reasons. You just pick the one that does the most damage. That's not really this. This will definitely change the way you interact with Reaper's Mark a lot. And it also gives you...
Countered.
I wonder if not painful death, but like, I wonder if Exterminate can proc off itself. Like, for example, if you have a 15% chance to apply Reaper's Mark, 100 or 30% with painful death, I'm assuming that will trigger Exterminate again.
Dodge.
So you could just kind of RNG into like crazy value, but then like there are certain fights where you know you'll need Swift End at certain points, maybe. I don't know. I think you were probably just going to play the one of these that it sims the most. I think that's true. But I think the question provided to you is more interesting than that, even though that might be the way you solve it. I kind of like this. I think I need to play with it, but I don't hate this immediately. There's a lot of other choice nodes that are a lot worse than this. Yeah, I mean, it's Gamba versus consistency. I mean, could you imagine painful death RNG? I mean, you could, if Reaper's Mark is strong, I mean, you could absolutely pop off with. Pretty sure you'd still take Swift End right now, but I don't know. Blood Fever. Your Blood Plague has a chance to deal 30% increased damage to Shadow Frost, and your Frost Fever has a chance to deal 30% increased damage to Shadow Frost. Is that on application or every tick? And I'm pretty sure it's every tick. And the reason why is it's just giving you some extra. It's basically just juicing up your. Is it juicing up your Reaper's Mark?
Get down.
So I'm assuming like your Blood Plague is ticking, it's ticking, and then it procs, and it's going to do two sources of damage. It's going to tick for Blood Plague, but then it's also going to do that extra tick called Blood Fever, probably. And I imagine that both of them give you a stack on your Reaper's Mark. So it's making it explode faster, and it's giving you more value with your stacks. And maybe there's more synergy later. Reaper's Mark Explosion deals up to 30% increased damage based on your target's missing health, and applies Soul Reaper to targets below. Ooh! Ooh-hoo-hoo. I don't think Soul Reaper, as far as I can tell, Soul Reaper isn't as good as it used to be. I remember DK's telling me that yesterday, because like Soul Reaper used to literally make, at least on Holy DK, is the best execute in the game. I'm not currently sure how it stands for Frost. Plus, I also think the bottom of the DK class tree is still a little problematic. Hopefully it gets looked at in the War Within. That is fantastic if Soul Reaper is good. And you also don't need to take Soul Reaper for this to work, right? So it's not like pushing you into a talent. Okay, I like that. Down here, while Icy Talons is active, your abilities that spend Runic Power deal Shadow Frost damage. So Blood, Marin, and Heartstrike have a 20% chance to... Oh, wait, there's actually... Okay, let's back up a second. So I'm assuming... Does this change the damage, or is it doing extra? It changes the damage, right? You just do Shadow Frost damage with your spells rather than... Right? Do you think it's going to change your animations? That was one thing that really sold me. I'm not usually a art or theme guy within WoW, but in Aberrus, I loved all the Shadow Flame shit. Like, I just thought that purple and red combo just looked so cool.
Adrenaline.
So I wonder if while Icy Talon, if Dark Talons, while Icy Talons is active, your abilities that spend runic power deal Shadow Frost damage. I wonder if that'll actually alter the appearance of your abilities slightly, because that has kind of looked really cool in the past. Either way, and just in general, Heart Strike and Marrow Rend have a 20% chance to increase the max stacks of an active Icy Talon by 1 up to 2 times.
Grib.
And consuming Killing Machine or Rhyme has a 20% chance to increase the maximum stacks of Icy Talon. Okay. And then Wither Away is the choice node of this. Blood Plague deals its damage in half the duration, and the second Scythe of Exterminate applies Blood Plague. Okay, so when you're proccing Reaper's Mark, it's going to be putting up your dots again, so you don't have to Blood Boil, and the dots you're putting up by Blood Boil are doing double damage.
Grib.
How much damage does Blood Plague do? I haven't played Blood this expansion. How much, is Blood Plague a blaster? Like, is that doing a lot of your AoE damage? It's not the majority, it's a dot, right? So, okay, so I mean, it sounds like this will be pretty strong. But you kind of need resets, or at least you need to play Swift End. I mean, Painful Death would kind of make this... Well, I mean, you're blood boiling anyway, so... I don't know if that would even matter. It wouldn't, like... I'm like, the only way I'm thinking about this is, like, is Wither Away going to feel bad if, like, your Blood Plague's falling off? That's not really how Blood plays. How Blood plays. And then for Frost, Frost Fever deals its damage. And... Okay, the first one is way more interesting. Actually, I don't even know if I like either. I think this one's kind of... Unless it changes the animations to be really cool.
Grib.
The second one of these, like, Wither Away seems like they had a decent idea for blood, and then they tried to apply it to Frost, and I feel like that's just really silly. Well, I mean, I guess all it's doing is it's saying in both of them, regardless of the Exterminate applying Frost Fever thing, it's just saying your dots deal double damage, even though you put them up again permanently. It's okay. And then, okay, whatever. I didn't like that one.
Counter.
Shadow Frost damage applies... perfect. This makes all of this make sense now. Shadow Frost damage applies double stacks to Reaper's Mark and quadruple stacks when it's a critical strike. Rhyme, and then this makes Rhyme-empowered Howling Blast deal Shadow Frost damage, and Blood Boil deal Shadow Frost damage. Okay, so this is much more synergistic with this. And again, I wonder if Blood Boil will look different that is Shadow Frost. And I'm kind of looking forward to that. And with these being so heavy theme-based, I think they could do that, and I hope it looks really cool. Okay, so that makes this make a lot more sense. Or this, I think. Where is it? No.
Grib.
You're gonna get stacks of this for sure, big time. A lot of it. I think Frost is going to get way higher stacks of this because, like, Frost just constantly does ticks of this damage, like way more than Blood does. Okay, so this looks like it's the damage reduction node. I have no opinion on this from tanks, so when I make this defensive argument, I often see tanks push back, and they're like, no, tanking has never felt this good before. Right? I'm there with you. Cool. I'm not talking about tanks. Tanks are kind of their own thing. For healers and DPS players, the defensiveness in this game has gotten super out of control through resilience and avoidance, and more importantly, through the class tree giving you just way too many defensive options. Everyone's seen what's happened to Mage this expansion, which is completely insane, but even classes like Mistweaver Monk went from having to choose between Dampen Harm, Diffuse Magic, and Healing Elixir to getting all of them and Fort Brew. That happening to the entire game, certainly some classes more than others, has vastly increased the problem to where Blizzard's only way of challenging you is trying to one-shot your character. And that's super annoying for players to just have to know whether they're going to get one-shot and press the button ahead of time versus a much more fluid, reactionary, peripheral vision view of your health bar and making decisions after you've taken damage in the past. The defensive power creep in this game is out of control. They need to nerf it. And I'm not going to mention this for the rest of the day because I'm going to look at 11 other trees. But just seeing classes gain more defensiveness is a huge, like, nuclear warning going off. Like, there's just like an alarm going off that hopefully they're aware that this could be a big problem. Okay. That being said, there is a defensive imbalance in the game at the moment. I would say last expansion it was more. There were more than a few classes that were horrible, a bunch of classes that were average, and then a few classes that were great. Now it's weird, where like a few classes are. More than a few classes are unbelievably OP, and they also happen to randomly be playing Verse, which again, Verse is just such a huge problem in PvE. And then there's not nearly as many bad classes defensively. Like Red Paladins were one of the worst defensive classes in Shadowlands.
I see everything.
They are significantly better now, right? I mean, Red Paladins are probably one of the tankiest classes in the game. Hunters were super squishy in Shadowlands. Hunters got major defensive buffs. I don't like they're not nearly as strong as Red Paladins, but they are certainly just right within average defensive-ness. If you think Hunters are squishy, you're wrong. Shamans are still a little down in the mud. I think there is room to give classes defensiveness in the tree. I just think it's going to be a problem if they're just like, well, every class needs a defensive node, because that's just not true. And that's my last time I'm going to rant on this today.
Adrenaline rush.
But you get my point. Death's Bargain. When you summon a damaging effect equal to 20% of your maximum health, I have 2,000 viewers on YouTube. That's insane. You instantly cast Death Pact at 50% effectiveness. May only occur once every 2 minutes. Death Pact stinks, so that's not that good, which I guess is good for my argument before. When a Reaper's Mark explodes, the cooldowns of this effect and Death Pact are reduced by 5 seconds. Okay, so I'm assuming you're going to instantly cast it regardless of whether it's on cooldown or not. It's just going to go off. And it's also like not going to happen when you're low HP. It could happen even from 100 to 75, so it could be completely useless. This could actually be bad. Like, you could take a big hit of damage and then Death Pact cast,
Adrenaline
which
rush.
gives you like a healing absorb. And then you actually... and then like now you're in trouble. Anyways, let's read the next one. Each rune spent reduces the magic damage you take by 2%. And each rune generated reduces the physical damage you take by 2% for 5 seconds. Okay, so you're just going to play that 100%. I mean, that's 10 times better than the other one. You need to buff Death's Bargain a lot to compete with the second one. That's, I mean, infinitely fucking better. Also, insane. I'm trying to... it's not insane. You probably are going to be rolling around with an average of like... maybe like 6% magic DR.
Countered.
Something like that. 4 to 6%, which is totally fair. And way better than Death's Bargain. I would say to look at Death's Bargain again. That choice node isn't actually a choice. Like the way you need to look at this is like Rune Carved Plates is like passive defensiveness, but in most scenarios, this may be a PvP thing, but Death's Bargain is also kind of that. It's just significantly worse. Like, you getting a 50% effectiveness Death Pact is not a massive thing that's going to be game-changing. It's going to be super random. Reaper's Mark exploding is not happening all the time, right? It's a 30-second cooldown, or it's something that can chain. So that just has to be made better. It must be a PvP thing. I don't know. Either way. Next choice. Reduces the cooldown of Lichborn and Raised Dead by 30 seconds. Okay. When an enemy deals direct damage to your AMS, their cast speed is... Okay, this is a... What? I mean, even for PvP, Expelling Shield has to be dookie, right? I mean, that's... What's going on here?
Get down.
Frontal.
I mean, so you just take the first one 1,000% of the time. I mean, I guess they wanted to give you... This is very clear. Like, I've heard a lot of comments from PvPers. Not a lot, because I barely hear anything from PvPers. But they're like, hero talents seem much more PvE focused with like a random node that makes sense for PvP. And that makes sense. I mean, I think most of the game is PvE focused with like a few things for PvP. That's how it's been for a long time. But so this one, I guess, is they're trying to throw some PvP thing, but I'm pretty sure PvPers would even want the first thing.
Move out. Frontal.
All right, whatever. Okay, cool. So we're done with this, and we have Exterminate. I still think my initial...
Get down.
You know what? Let's rank all of these at the end. Because I need to kind of get context, because seeing how all the other ones are gives a lot more context. So we'll wait. It's actually insane.
Move
How
out.
come
Countered.
literally a third of my viewers are on YouTube? That's crazy. First YouTube stream, doing pretty good.
Place.
Randomly have
Get
2,500 viewers. Okay.
Move out.
Shout out YouTube.
Frontal.
Moving on.
Wash.
Move out.
To the last Death Knight tree, we have now officially seen all 3
Get
Death Knight
down.
trees. We've seen Sandlane, Deathbringer, and Rider of the Apocalypse. Rider of the Apocalypse won the thing we did before any of these got
Counter.
released, which is what are the coolest names, and Rider of the Apocalypse was definitely the best. This was... I mean, this is
Adrenaline
just an
rush.
amazing thing. I've already heard about the first part, but let's get into it. Spending runes has a chance to call forth the aid of a horseman for 10 seconds. Mograine
Frontal.
will cast Death and Decay at his location that follows his position. Okay, I wonder
Get
if
down.
your talents that are needed... Oh, check the dev notes. Okay, I'll do that in a second. I wonder if your abilities that require you being in a D&D will work off of his D&D. Oh, you guys are saying that's what the dev note is about. I love memes. Let me read this.
Adrenaline rush.
Dev note. While not directly related to Rider of the Apocalypse tree, we both know that Sandlane and Rider trees have talents that interact with Death and Decay, and we'd like to avoid those talents draw too much of the player's focus of feedback, as we have some plans to alleviate the pressure of staying with... Oh, what a dub. What a dub. They're saying, hey guys, just letting you know, we hear your feedback that having to be in your D&D sucks. So, we have nothing to reveal right here at this moment, but I can say we have plans to change how Cleaving Strikes functions them more within. Alright, so if you guys don't know, Cleaving Strikes is the thing in their class tree that makes their abilities... Basically, you just have to be in your D&D at all times. There's also, like, some thing where you gain haste while in it. So there's other things to change besides Cleaving Strikes, but this also, I know we're already done with all the Paladin trees, but it needs to be mentioned. There's another class in the game where it's Mastery, and DKs complain about having to play in their D&D. Paladins have to play in their Consecrate, which is smaller, or at least to be smaller. Might be the same size now or bigger. There's significantly more power in Consecrate than there is D&D. And just for everyone that plays this game, the play in your Consecrate gameplay is absolutely horrible. And I have trust that they'll fix it, because there's no way they could not have heard the feedback about D&D without people every single time mentioning, yeah, Paladin is 10 times worse. So I'm glad they realized this. Definitely also make Paladins not have... Playing in your Consecrate is horrible, horrible gameplay. All right. Guys, I know it doesn't use runes. I know it's up all the time, and it's not on a cooldown like D&D. That does not change the fact that it is absolutely horrible. If you kite out of it even slightly while you're doing the rest of your rotation, you're just like a piece of paper. It's really bad. You'll insta-die. It's so bad. Okay. Here we go. Spending runes is the chance to call forth the aid. Okay, so cast D&D at its location that follows this position. With them making being in your D&D less valuable, it also makes Mograine not seem great. But either way... White Mane, cast Undeath on your target, dealing Shadow Frost damage per stack every 3 seconds for 24 seconds. Each time it deals damage, it gains a stack, cannot be refreshed. And this is an RNG thing, so none of these look super powerful right now, so I imagine there's way more synergy and power later in the tree, or this is going to stink. Cast Chains of Ice on your target, slowing their movement speed by 70%. And increasing the damage they take from you by 5% for 8 seconds. Okay, so a little bit of a buff. But, like, I don't know. You're barely going to even track that, right? And then while Nazgrim is active, you gave Apocalyptic Conquest, increasing your strength by 5%. So, basically, all of these are, like, you gain some, like, little niche utility thing besides Nazgrim. Plus, also, just some damage happens. Who knows how much Mogaine's Death and Decay is. But hopefully it's tuned enough to where when you get Mograine, you're not pissed. Right? Because you're not getting... you're not getting one of the cooler ones where you're gaining 5% damage, they take 5% more damage from you, or also you're giving them a dot. But maybe they could just make Mogaine's Death and Decay own, and it also AoEs. So, like, Mograine might actually be the best one of all of these, right? Depending on the scenario. These trees are hard to read and know exactly where to go, because sometimes you need to read the next thing, the bottom thing immediately. It actually kind of looks like we might want to do that. Let's look at that. Okay, Army of the Dead and Frostworm's Fury call upon all 4 horsemen to aid you for 20 seconds. So this is a Frost on Unholy Tree. Okay, so it makes your cooldowns... Well, okay, Frostworm's Fury is really interesting. Last time I checked... That's a talent, right? That's like a... I guess it's not hard to get. Do you play this a lot? That's the only thing I'm thinking of. So, like, it kind of shoehorns you into 2 talents almost, if the horsemen are strong. That being said, we've talked about this before with tier sets. It's really not complicated to understand whether people like being shoehorned into talents or not. It's usually when that thing is or isn't powerful enough,